Hello there, and welcome to this episode of Mindset Mentoring for Athletes, Families, and Entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Coach Chuck, and again, I am on the road in Utah and have the privilege and honor of interviewing a new friend, colleague, fellow speaker, Tim Cox. And so I'm honored to have him and be able to share his story, and for all of you to meet the man behind the legend, because he is a serial entrepreneur and got some great stories. So welcome to the show, Tim.
Chuck, thanks for having me, buddy. Good to see you.
It's good to have you here and take the time out, and I love being able to be present. Most of my stuff's done virtually, so this is really kind of cool. Well, and I always have my guests begin by just kind of giving us a little background, introducing you to my audience, right? So kind of where you grew up, a little bit of that kind of background, and then we could delve into your story and all the other things that we want to talk about mindset related.
All right. Well, I currently live in the greater Vegas area, but I'm an Oregonian from since birth, and I grew up in Southern Oregon, about an hour south of Eugene. I've been kind of in the entrepreneur business space since I was a little kid. My mom pissed me off when I was 6, and I decided to get back at her by starting my own business with my great-grandma, and I've pretty much been in one business or another for ever since.
Yeah, I love that. That's such a cool story. And so obviously we're going to delve into that a little bit, because 6 years old is like, lemonade stands, that kind of thing, right? You think of that early entrepreneurial, that proverbial wonderful lemonade stand. Well, yours wasn't quite a lemonade stand. Why don't you tell us about that business, because it was a similar idea.
Well, we did sell lemonade. We had 2 items on our menu, and they were pasties, or savory meat pies, hand pies, and fresh squeezed lemonade. And I just got to back up a little bit, because my mom owned car dealerships, and she didn't really believe in hiring a babysitter. And I was an only child at the time, and she would just bring me to work with her. And the best babysitters in her mind were the lot boys, which are teenagers usually who wash cars, move cars around, clean up, just small maintenance type things. But it's not a career position by any means. And, even at 6, I was like the longest serving lot boy a lot of the time. And so I was training these guys on, this is, you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this. I even moved cars if there was a model that I could actually reach the pedals, because I was 6. But one time I was training this dude, and he let it slip that he was going to be paid $3.35 an hour, which was minimum wage back then. And, my little mind went like, well, he's terrible at this, and he has no idea what he's doing. She's paying him $3.35 an hour. She's got to pay me the equal amount. So I went up to my mom's office, and I was like, hey, Chuck over here is getting paid $3.35 an hour. I think you need to start paying me. And my mom looked at me and was like, I'm not paying you a cent. I pay for everything you have. And that pissed me off. So I was like, you know what? I'm not working here anymore. And she's like, well, fine. It's like, I don't care. And I'm not even going to come here anymore. You just need to take me to my Mimi's. So she took me to my great-grandma's house, and my Mimi was my favorite person on the planet. And I got to say, she was also the best cook on the planet. But I have to admit, going from hanging out with teenagers to hanging out with your great-grandma got boring pretty quick. And about day 4, I said to Mimi, I was like, I think you and me should start a business. And she went, really? What are we going to do? And I said, I think we should sell your pasties. And she went, really, where are we going to sell them? And I'm like, in the car dealership. We'll just set up a place in the car dealership. And she was like, all right, let's try it. And so the other thing, she also made the best fresh squeezed lemonade. The recipe is you have to peel the lemons, and the lemon peels sit in the sugar for 24 hours, and it gets this really depth of flavor for the lemonade. And then the savory meat pies, everything's from scratch. My grandma, she was my great-grandma. She had actually come across the Oregon Trail in a wagon, the whole bit, and she's been baking bread for the family since she was 4, and she could bake anything. But these pies, I still have the recipe. I still even break out and make. I mean, they are amazing. Well, we set up our little stand, and everyone was kind of laughing at us, like, look at this. What are they doing over here? And then this one salesman came over, and he kind of was taking pity on us, but he took one bite of that pasty, and it was like he was Paul Revere after that. Oh my God, you guys, you have to try this. So we sold out within an hour. And by day 2, there was a line when we went to set up, and they're like, when are you coming back? I go, well, we're going to come back it was summer. We'll come back every day. And by day 3, we had to hire help. And that was my first business venture. So
that's such an awesome story on so many levels. Now, one of the things I'm curious about, so your mom owned car dealerships, so there's entrepreneurship there.
Oh, definitely. Yes.
And your great-grandmother had well, let's give it a try. Now that's kind of unique to me, I think. What was that? Was there a long history of that kind of entrepreneurship in your family, or did it start with your mom?
So earlier, Mimi had she had a pie shop in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Before my mom was born, and so she had been in business herself before. But yeah, I mean, I would say that entrepreneurship obviously wasn't a foreign concept in our family. It didn't hit everyone. It's like and I wouldn't even say generation, like even kids from the same generation, like my brother's not an entrepreneur. I mean, that's no interest in it. It's just not him. But those of us who do, my mom never encouraged me to start the businesses. Once I did, she taught me a lot. I mean, I will say that first company, it was first of all successful because Mimi was such a good cook.
Sure.
It was sustainable because my mom taught me especially what accounting and financial statements and numbers mean and how numbers tell a story. And I've known that since I was a kid. I can look at pretty much any financial statement and I can say, oh, you have a weakness here, here, and here, because your numbers are telling me that story. And to me, it jumps out because my mom taught me that when I was a little kid.
See,
but for a lot of people, they're like, what are you, I mean, they have no idea what I'm talking about. But to me, it was just.
Well, it's also interests me because that's real education, right? Like you're learning things because you're interested in it. Your mom's helping you teach. That's why things kind of last. It helps develop some of those skills at an early age. But you also just said that it was sustainable. So talk us through this. You started this so sustainable. Now, I kind of know the end of the story, but
right.
my guest...
Sure, and when I'm a huge proponent of ecological sustainability, but that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about building a business that lasts. Okay. And so when we started, we had a lot of inherent benefits. We were paying no cost for our raw ingredients. I mean, we just started baking the pies in my mom's kitchen using her grocery tab, which worked fine for the first week or so. But I mean, we grew pretty darn quick. And at the end of the summer, my mom was basically, okay, I mean, I think by that time we had hired like 7 grandmas that were making meat pies. And my mom would get up and go downstairs and there were 7 old ladies in her kitchen. She's like, we're going to have to find another way to make this happen. So we then found, it's not really fair to say abandoned, but an empty restaurant space that had been empty for a while. And we didn't want to open a restaurant, but we wanted the commercial kitchen. Sure. And again, with my mom helped out in advice, said, you guys made enough money, you can put a down payment on, don't just rent the space, buy the space, because then you will have an asset that's going to continue to grow in value. And so, I'm a September kid, so I was maybe 7 by then because school had started when we bought the building. And then we were still, though, just, I say we were kind of food trucks before food trucks existed because we were a stand. We would bake and then we would move to the site. But the other thing that happened in the car business is my mom's dealership was getting all these foot traffic that no other car dealership was getting. And we were approached by a competitor saying, hey, what would it take for you to set up at our dealership? And they said, we will pay you. So it was opposite paying rent. They paid us to set up because they wanted the foot traffic. And we, again, had hired people because we were so busy that we were able to continue that way. So at one point we had 3 dealerships that we were selling hand pies and fresh lemonade out of. And then when we bought the space, we then decided we could do more because we were much more efficient in the commercial kitchen. And then we kind of went into catering. And then we started doing some weddings. And then this opportunity came about to buy a wedding venue. And so we did that. And then we also purchased a barn that we turned into a wedding venue. And by the time I was in high school, it was pretty good business to exit. So it was a cool experience.
So, all right, so talk to me a little bit then how that, you're running this business, you're young, so your mom's doing some of the help with all that, your great-grandmother's helping organize the cooking and all those sort of things. How much, you think of how busy that sounds like the business was. Talk to me a little bit about what your childhood was like in terms of other things you did. Because you think of a child who's, I'm assuming that you really kind of liked what you were doing. This is kind of cool. I'm getting money or
Yeah, but I was still a kid.
That.
I mean, I would admit, I was still a kid though too. I mean, I joined the swim team. I played soccer. I played Little League. Hung with my friends. Went to school. I will always say that business is not based on one person. Business is the team. The other part that I learned young was to surround yourself with really good people. The one area too that to me was kind of luck, my first hire was my babysitter. My second hire was her grandma. And her grandma, if you think of a stereotypical German woman that rules with an iron fist, that was her grandma. And she brought efficiency and excellence to our production process. Very lucky to have her. I didn't have to coach her. I didn't have to, she, looked, the other part, I was a little kid, so they were just gonna kind of, he's the owner, but,
Yeah.
But it was part of it, but it was an education. It was an education of what entrepreneurship is all about. And I didn't know the word entrepreneurship. I probably still can't spell it every time I try. But, being a small business operator and owner, you couldn't ask for a better education. But as I got older, I also was smart enough to hire people that worked full-time in the business so I could still pursue other interests and opportunities.
Yeah, I love that. And I think part of what I really like about that whole story, though, is because one of the things I talk about when I'm dealing with teenagers and all is the importance of the message and what the family kind of brings into that. So the support that they obviously gave you and let you still be a kid, and it's your business, but they're teaching you so much by allowing you, giving you the freedom to do this, I think is just fantastic. It's,
Yeah, and there were weird dynamics in there too. It was, our business made money, from day one. And
which is unusual, right?
Yes, it is, yes. But as a kid, you don't have a lot of expenses. So, it was hard, I never really asked for anything because I would just go buy it. And that's a unique dynamic with your parent, was, it wasn't like, oh, I want an allowance. I'd laugh at an allowance, I'll give you $1 to do this. I'm like, I could hire someone to do that. I was very fortunate that my parents kept me very humble.
Yeah.
I never had the added, I did, internally often let's go just buy it. I want a pair of shoes. I would go buy a pair of shoes. But they never allowed me to get too big for my britches, which I appreciate. It was, especially after Mimi passed, because she was definitely older. I was probably about 10 at that point. And we had built the business together. And so I then, she left me her entire share of the ownership. So it was, there was opportunity for disaster. Luckily, my parents didn't let me get there, and my friends and my community. I mean, the other part that really helps too is just the community I grew up in. The expectation was if anyone got too flashy, there was someone that was going to cut them down immediately.
Yeah. And I love the fact you taught that lesson. And from the time I met you, you are very humble, genuine, like down-to-earth guy. That's one of the things I think is one of your skills, is you can connect with so many people. And I don't think people would have any idea that you were not just successful in that business. There were several that came after that as well. And before we get to some of those stories, sure. There's some other things I've begun to learn about you that I know help shape you and giving you a treasure trove of stories to tell. Like when you do public speaking, which I know is one of your, what you would really love to do now, is be able to speak to groups about all the different knowledge-based experiences you have. But you have like stories from summer camps and then going to a private school, and like you came into my world. You came to New England, right, for private school.
Yeah, spent some time there.
So why don't you kind of talk us through a little bit of that, going from Oregon, running a business, you're getting into high school, but you decide.
All right, Chuck, I got to stop you there real quickly.
Okay, so
it's Oregon.
How did I just say it?
You said Oregon.
Oh,
it's Oregon.
Yeah. So there I go with my New England accent again, right? That was like that sore happened in my youth. All right, Oregon. So kind of talk us through how that kind of evolved, and did you sell the business before you went to the private school? Was it still going?
It was still going.
Okay, so talk us through that.
I mean, it's one of those things that, coming from a small town, I was always curious, what went on in bigger towns. I'm so glad to be from where I grew up, but I was never content with where I'm at, and that might be why I've lived in so many places in my life. But honestly, it was, I read an article in Time or Newsweek about boarding schools, and I went, I want to go to boarding school. And so I just started applying to schools. I didn't ask for permission. I didn't tell them. I just started applying. And it's before the internet, so it's, research is a little different then. Like you reach out and say, hey, I'm interested, and then they send you a packet and you look at it. And I did have one teacher that I talked to. It's like, hey, I think I really want to do this. She goes, oh, yeah, very encouraging. And then I kind of broke it down, because I will admit that article was really all about Andover. Oh. I mean, it was kind of like the experience of Andover, and so that was one of the first schools I reached out to. But then I did some, I was reading different things, and like Choate Rosemary Hall was where John F. Kennedy went to school, so I looked at that. Hotchkiss was really known for its small school and small class size, and it was all very interesting. It was also very what's dramatic to me, because it was New England. I mean, New England was like where Paul Revere was, and my favorite book as a kid was Johnny Tremain.
Oh, of course.
And I was
yeah.
It's like, it's history. It's we might have the Oregon Trail, and but that was the founding of the U.S. So very interesting. But the thing that really caught my eye in the research that I was doing and looking at was the Harkness table method of teaching at Phillips Exeter, who is also, the main rival of Andover. And I just decided I was going to go there. So I applied and did everything. And I'm sure I asked, I needed a parent signature somewhere. And I just said, hey, Mom, sign this. And she just signed it. Because I never brought it to their attention till I had already registered.
So you certainly had that just I'm going to do this kind of stuff from a very early age. Like
I was very independent.
I'm going.
And part of that independence, though, came from, and I was not a neglected child by any means. But if you like put it into time spent with your child, when you're trying to run businesses and are relatively young yourself, I mean, it was just expected that I would just take care of myself.
Thanks.
I was not a needy child. I was always, because sometimes people hear my story and go like, where were your parents? And I'm like, well, they were around and everything. But I learned very early on that it made a lot much better sense to ask for forgiveness and permission with my parents.
Yeah, sure.
And I just went with that. And then for them, it was easier just to say, okay. It's like, I wasn't doing bad things. I mean, it's like, I'm going to get mad at my kid because he signed up to go to a better school.
Right.
It just, but it also wasn't in their realm of thinking. I mean, it just, like, they didn't read that article in Newsweek, so they didn't even think about that these schools existed. But when it was already a done deal. I had already paid. I was like, I'm going to, I think if I don't really remember, but I could see myself going, oh, okay, I'm going to leave in 2 weeks. Where are you going? I'm going to New Hampshire. Oh, you are?
At 14 or whatever you were.
13 probably. I mean, yeah. Well, when are you coming back? I'm like, Christmas. We got to go to school. No, I'm leaving to go to school. I don't want to go to school here. I want to go to this school, so that's where I'm going. And that was kind of the discussion we had. And then it was, it was kind of like, okay, I guess. Okay. But then, the challenge that happened is I'm this small Oregon kid, and I went and had an amazing education and learned so much. And I absolutely loved it. But I was exposed to things I had never been exposed to. And I remember that first Christmas break. It was time to book a flight back home when one of my friends said, hey, we're going to Switzerland to go skiing. Do you want to come with us? And I went, hell yeah. So it was like, I've never been to Switzerland. Yeah. And what happened is I just never came home. And then one day I got called to the office at school. And, office at a boarding school is a little bit different than at a public school. Sure. And there was my mom. And I'm like, hey, what are you doing here? And as I said, she had she had decided I was getting a little too big for my britches, so I got my ass pulled right back to Oregon.
So
yeah.
It's kind of put you back in your place, so to speak?
I mean, I will say this. My mom very seldom said no. But when she did say no, she meant it.
That was it.
Yeah.
And you knew.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. 100%.
I was like, okay.
I will admit, my best friend growing up, his parents always said no. And then it was like this game they played of like, oh, I really want to go. And he could, so many times he would make himself cry on cue because he knew if he got then they'd say yes. I will say the most trouble I ever remember getting into is I had asked to go to a concert in Eugene with my friends, and my mom had said no. And my friend said, oh, I'm going to ask her for you. And I said, not a good idea. Let's not do that. But he did it anyway. And my mom immediately said, yes, of course he can go. And I went. When I got home, don't you ever, ever, ever have him ask, I gave you the answer, you knew the answer. And I knew I was like, oh, this is a bad idea. And then when I'm at the concert, I didn't have, because she's going to be pissed. But I really respected that, and I will admit that that's one thing as a leader in business I've learned as well is don't be a knee-jerk reaction with no. When someone comes to you with an idea, I usually want to say yes, but I'm going to make sure they've answered questions. I'm going to question them on it. And sometimes I do have to say no as a business leader, but it's never going to be a knee-jerk. I want my team to come up with ideas. I want my team to be creative. I want my team to share ownership of the work with me. That's when the magic happens. Mm-hmm. And there's not a single business, there's not a single accomplishment I've had in my life that I did alone. Every single thing was based on other people being willing to get on board with me and assist me and be a part of the team to make it happen.
So let's dive in, and I know, geez, you and I could probably talk for hours. So I do have to be a little bit mindful.
All right, I'm sorry.
I do want to kind of delve into that a little bit because, again, I know some of the stories of entrepreneurial stories and all, and this idea of teamwork, and you've said that's kind of you've got this superpower, this ability to help find or put together the right people. What do you think that is? What is it that you are able to see or pull out of people? Talk a little bit about how.
I would say this. I'm really self-aware. I know what I'm good at, and I know what I'm not good at. And so the first thing I'm going to try to make up for in my team is my deficits. So if I'm not good at something, I want someone on my team that is really good at that. And even if I am good at something, there's probably someone that can do it better. And I never am, and I never want to be the smartest person in the room, because I want the smart people around me working with me to make something happen. I would say my superpower is I'm one of the most resourceful people on the planet. And it's really easy to be resourceful now. I mean, with AI and Google, and YouTube, you can make up for any area of knowledge. It's out there and it's easily accessible. Years ago, it was a little bit harder. And it really, that's when networking really to me was my saving grace. I would be based on something and I would go, I don't know how to do this, but who do I know that does know how to do this? And I would call them up and say, hey, maybe it's just advice I need, or maybe they know someone that knows someone that might want to be on the team. And that to me is, that really is my superpower, is, looking at it and being able to say, we need this, we need that, we need this, and then going and finding those people. Very few people on my leadership teams just randomly applied. They were recruited because I'm going to be looking for the deficit, and then I'm going to be asking around who can do this, or it might be that now, again, with AI and the internet, it might be someone showed something on YouTube and I went, wow, they're really good at this. I'm going to call them and say, hey, tell me more. And then they might be my target, or they might know someone that knows someone, or hey, this is what I'd look for. But I would say this: if you're going to be if you're going to be successful in business, you're going to be very open-minded, and you're going to realize you usually do not have the answers, and you usually do not know what you do not know. And so come into it with the mindset of, I'm going to find out as much as I can, and I'm going to listen to everyone that gives me advice. And you can't take everyone's advice, because you can talk to one guy that says do it, paint the wall black, and the other guy says paint the wall green. Well, who's right? You're going to have to make a decision in there, but that doesn't, you need to be open to why. Why is it supposed to be black? I will tell you, my mom owned car dealerships forever, and my mom told me, never buy a black car. Never buy a black car. You will hate it. I know you will. And black cars are pretty sweet looking. And I have to admit that, when it came to my third car, I really wanted a black car. And I bought that car. And within a week, I regretted it. Because again, when you grow up in a family of car dealership owners, your cars are always clean. And keeping a black car clean is really, really, really hard. And I will tell you, that was the one black car I have ever bought. And I will never buy another one, because I learned right away. And the swirl marks, if you do not, it was, and my mom knew, and I knew my mom knew better than anything I knew. And I knew we had never had a black car in the entire time of my life. We had different cars every week, and they could disappear on a dime, and they were never black. because she had learned that lesson. I should have listened, but I didn't. But I also never asked her, why should I not have a black car? And then she told me, like, you'll never keep it clean, and then pointed out swirl marks. I went, oh, I get it. But it took me, I had to try it myself. So don't ever get a black car.
In the beginning of that answer, you said something that I think is very valuable for people to really hold in on. And I think it was either Socrates or Plato who had said that the beginning of wisdom is to know thyself. So your self-awareness is really important. And that's actually one of the things when I'm working with clients is I try to help them identify the seeds of the story and all these things that are going on, because it is so important. And then understanding, as you know yourself, begin to identify those weaknesses and all, surrounding yourself around people. I've got a good friend who's an entrepreneur like you, and very successful scientist who started several different drug companies. But one of the things he said to me that really stands out is kind of what you just said, is he's a very smart guy, but he goes, I was never the smartest. I always surrounded myself with very smart people who I could pull off from, bounce ideas off from, who filled in all those gaps. And that's kind of what you were saying too. Is that, what's the source of that? Like, I'm into mindset. That's a way of thinking, I think, but there's a level of humility in there as well, I think. Where do you think the source of that comes from? That ability to not just surround yourself, but to be humble enough and to
I mean, I'm not one to sit there and psychoanalyze myself or anything like that. But I will say that I think for me, it's just having such positive experience by having strong teams, and once you experience that magic that happens when everyone is performing in the position where they're best suited and encouraged and supported to move things in a positive direction, it's game changing. When you work with a team of people that don't want to be there and don't really care, you can feel it. And so, like I said, it changes the entire culture or atmosphere when everyone's set up to do their best. And I would say, as a CEO, as an operator, I always look at my job as removing barriers for the people on my team to perform at their very best. Because when that happens, amazing things happen. I've been in plenty of businesses where our original direction was a certain plan, and then someone said, what about? And we looked at that and went, that just might work. And, we changed the trajectory of the business based on that small decision, and then it compounds after that. So I would also say be open. I'm kind of known for looking for undervalued assets, and I want to come in and fix them up. I'm a big guy on systems. We document everything. We're very consistent with what we do. But it's not me writing the system. That's our team developing the system and then implementing and going forward. And we're never afraid to examine a system, because you can make mistakes at that point and you can fix it. And the best people to fix it are the people implementing the system. But you need to be open to pivoting as well. How long have we known about AI? A year, 2, maybe 3? We have to change what we're doing. I'm not hiring copywriters anymore. We're throwing in AI and saying, hey, make this funny. And then it makes it funny, go, well, that joke didn't land, but we give it another cue. So, but I need more tech people than I ever thought I'd need. I admit right away, I'm not the tech genius, but I'm going to surround me with some tech geniuses to help me get there. Sure. And that's, so I your original question was, how are you self-aware to know that you want to surround yourself? I don't know how I got there. That's been my experience ever since that first hire. That could have been a disaster. My babysitter, she was the only one I knew. I was 6 years old. I had no network, and then her grandma, who was probably the single best hire I ever made in my life, That was total luck because it was her grandma. And, her grandma was scary. I got to admit, I was deathly afraid of that woman.
I just have to say, I could just, yeah.
But, she was a operations genius. And I have no, my Mimi was the best cook, but my Mimi was not the best. Let's get 10 people to cook and divide the work and, know exactly what we have to buy and have inventory control. That was Olga. Olga was the one that and she just took it over. So, yeah.
So let me ask you this, kind of wrap up. And again, there's so many more stories that I know you have to share, but you've got all these business experiences. That wasn't, that catering company or whatever.
That was just the first company.
Right. Yeah. So there's several others. So you got all these experiences. You've been in the consulting end, but now you want to speak. And why don't you talk just briefly a little bit about what's motivating you there, and what is that message that you want to bring? Because I know full well, having heard some of your talks and all, that you really can speak to a lot of audiences. So why don't you just tell us what it is that's motivating you now to get in that realm and
well, so we have a common denominator. We had the chance over the last year to work with Dan Clark. And the first time I heard Dan Clark speak, I was a sophomore in high school, and I heard him in the Superdome in New Orleans. And I remember thinking, no, this is the best speaker I ever heard. And a year ago, I got this random email from a person I had worked with years ago, but I had no interest in it. But in the headline, it said the word Dan Clark, and I wondered, is that the same Dan Clark? And I opened up, and it was, and I went, well, all right, I'm in. And what Dan Clark taught me over the last year is I always knew I could speak. I was a debater. I spoke competitively in Forensic League and everything, but I never thought I had a keynote in me. But Dan showed me that I did. And not only do I have one keynote in me, I have unlimited numbers of keynotes in me. And as I'm kind of, I don't feel old, but I am getting older. And, as I look for the next mountain I want to climb, I realize that so often in that speaker space, there's people that, they memorized a speech that they can give on command, but they really don't have true operator experience. They don't have that ability to customize. They don't have the ability to speak from experience. They can say, yes, I had this one experience happen in my life, and I pivoted, and I have this one message. That's not me. I have so many messages because I've had businesses that were instant successes. I've had businesses that we really had to work hard to pivot and move through. When things happen like the crash of '08, when you're in business, you either pivoted or you did not survive. I think we foresee some, there's other times that's happening. It's going to happen some more. And I think I have a message of that resilience and that building businesses that can withstand pressure. The other thing I didn't know a year ago is that I had a book in me. And I was challenged to write a book. And, I will admit, I got pitched like, oh, hire me and I'll just interview and I'll write a book for you. And I'm like, no, that's not me. It's like, oh, I'll put you a chapter in a book and you all can have a chapter. And I was like, that's not me either. It's like, if I'm going to write a book, I'm going to write an effing book. And then I sat down over Christmas, between Christmas and New Year's. I took that time. I was at the Oregon coast, just me at the beach, trying to figure out what would I want to say. And I realized that building things, especially businesses, but life in too, that can withstand pressure is what I'm passionate about. And that's a message I'm excited to share. But it's not just about one business. It's about multiples. And like I said, Dan showed me that I had, but now those keynotes are there, and I'm going to keep giving them.
And it's a message you share well. I've heard some of your early rounds, and it's it's a very adaptable message too, an important message. Tim, we have come to the end of our show. Thank you so much.
Thanks for
having me. We might have to do this
Chuck.
again because there's so many more stories. I'd love to have my audience here as well. You got a lot of wisdom.
I'm trying to get you to come out to visit me in Vegas.
Yes, and I would love to have you come visit me in Maine, right? So we could do the Maine lobster thing. So,
there we go.
So absolutely.
You can show me how to eat those tamales correctly.
Yes, very good. Tim has so much wisdom, and if you want to get in touch with Tim, timcox360.com, and we'll put the links to his social media in that page in the description of the show. But he's got so much wisdom to take. I encourage you to look him up and even get his book when it comes out. And again, thank you very much, Tim, for
Thanks
the
for
time.
having me, buddy. Good to see you.
Thank you.